the Spurs pull off the phenomenal comeback. They got off to a slow start, but end up dropping 41 points in the fourth quarter. That's right, 41 points in the fourth quarter to get the win over the Utah Jazz, 118-126. What's good, Spurs Digest family? I am Bryan Colbert here with a Spurs Digest post-game show. Man, it is always exciting when the Spurs get a W. Granted, we understand the Utah Jazz are not a good team. However, the way you are able to bounce back after a slow start like that is always a good sign, especially when you're missing 3 starters and your head coach. So we are going to celebrate this win. What's good, Spurs Digest family? Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit the doorbell so you get notified every time we drop a video. I know you guys are having a fun time watching y'all Spurs because I'm having a fun time watching the Spurs get off and do their thing. It's all about the wins, baby, and we got to win tonight. So you're going to be happy no matter what, because yes, the Utah Jazz only have 3 wins on the entire season. We understand that. Yes, the Utah Jazz did not have Jordan Clarkson, possibly their best player. We understand that. But it's still a win for the Spurs because we saw them do something we have seen them do almost all season, and that's get off to a slow start. But a lot of times when they get off to starts this slow, they haven't been able to bounce back. They haven't really been able to catch back up. Even with Wemby, even with Vassell, even with Sochan, they haven't been able to really recover from these aggressively slow starts. And tonight was an aggressively slow start against a really bad team. And maybe that team was just running, like maybe they were just going off fumes. But after that first quarter, the Spurs really started to get it together. Then when you get into that fourth, and they're still down because of such a slow start, but then you go into that fourth and you dominate like that and you drop 41 points. It is impressive, man. And again, the Jazz aren't a good team, but the Spurs have won 4 of their last 6 games. Think of the injuries and things they've gone through in that time span. Now, I'm not making excuses for them. However, you don't need to make excuses for a team that's won 4 of their last 6, right? Because that is a team that is with momentum. That is a team that is headed in the right direction. And I think that is what we need to remind ourselves when we see the Spurs beat bad teams. Because again, we'd be very upset if the Spurs lost this game. We'd be very upset if they weren't able to come back and drop 41 and come and get this W, right? We'd be very upset about that because we expect the Spurs to beat bad teams because we expect the Spurs to not be a bad team anymore. So be happy and be excited when your Spurs get W's, even if it's against bad teams. And when the Spurs get a W, it's more than likely because Chris Paul is having an excellent game. And once again, Chris Paul had an excellent game. The 1 for 6 from the 3-point line doesn't bother me. I look at those 10 assists. I look at that 13 points, and I look at the way he orchestrated that fourth quarter. Because if we want to keep it a buck, that fourth quarter was all Chris Paul. The things he was doing, the way he was just orchestrating that offense, the way he was moving the ball, the way he was even scoring, man. My man was taking step backs, doing the pick and roll with Castle. I mean, just doing anything he wanted to do out there and just calling the shots and looking like that leader that we need him so desperately to be. Wemby is not there. Vassell is not there. Sochan is not there. At some point, Chris Paul has to be the best player on the court, and that's what he was. Yes, Harrison Barnes balled out. Yes, Castle balled out. But in that fourth quarter, Chris Paul was the man. It looked like vintage Chris Paul. Yes, he was moving a little slower. However, Chris Paul was dominant. He was dominant. And to me, that really carried over to the entire team. It carried over to the entire energy of the team, man. Chris Paul just was so locked in that fourth, and he was not going to let the Spurs team lose. And I think that is an energy that you want from a guy like Chris Paul when you bring him in. It's an energy you want from a guy like Harrison Barnes, where these guys were not going to let these young fellas lose, and the young fellas followed suit. There was energy, there was aggression, they were forcing steals. The amount of points they were able to get off of turnovers and just getting to even getting to the line off of turnovers, man, it was so impressive to see what those guys did in the fourth quarter. And I don't care who you playing against. Bad teams don't drop 40 when it really matters. You know what I mean? Don't drop 40 in crunch time. Like, that's not what bad teams do. The Spurs woke up, man. They understood that how they started with that first quarter was not okay. It was not going to fly. And especially against a bad team, they're better than that. And to me personally, though, I find happiness knowing that the Spurs have this in them. And again, they did it without their best players. They were able to make a run without their best players. So yeah, we can say the Jazz are a 3-win team. However, we're missing 3 starters and a head coach. So I don't know if there's much more that can be said about this type of win, man. I think everybody should be happy and excited about that, especially watching Castle and Chris Paul play together, man. How beautiful was that, watching them, and how beautiful has it been watching them play this whole season, especially since Castle got into that starting lineup. We've talked about it a lot. Castle ain't going nowhere in this starting lineup. Castle is going to stay in this starting lineup, and how great has it been seeing him play? He played the second most minutes on the team, 35 minutes. He got to the line again. He moved the ball, man. He understood his assignments. He got to the line. He got to the rim. Just looking great. I mean, like, I love that little sequence where he sets that little screen for Chris Paul. Chris Paul yells at him, say, go to this position. And Chris Paul just bounce passes him the ball and he gets a nice bucket. You saw the bench go crazy for that. And that's the energy you want. That's the energy you want when you're making a comeback, man, when you're trying to beat a team and take them out. Because you got to a slow start and you messed up. I mean, that third quarter, man, I mean, they outscored them by 12. And then that fourth, that second half was just impressive, man. It was just an impressive second half. And it was an all around team effort as well, which to me was really impressive. And it was like vintage Spurs basketball, right? Like everybody did their little things, man. Like everybody found ways to contribute. Oh man, every time Tre Jones is playing his game, I love it, man. To me, Tre Jones is such a gem to have coming off your bench. Like, that is a starting caliber point guard. And we saw him start a lot. We saw him guard really, really tough matchups. And now you get to have a guy like this come off of your bench and, be a part of the rotation, and also learn from Chris Paul and also teach Castle. Like, to me, it's such a valuable piece to have back. And I think that we didn't talk enough about his injury. But it's showing how important he is when he is healthy for this team. And man, who can say enough about Charles Bassey though? Like, who can say enough? Talk about the team. Man, like, I am not ever going to not take a chance to hype up Charles Bassey because he brings an energy that I just feel is so necessary. And we kept asking and talking about the backup bigs for the San Antonio Spurs and who that backup big was going to be. Honestly, like, we've seen too many of these games, and this happened in this game where Zach Collins is in foul trouble. He is in foul trouble more times than not. And that is what really scared me about us not having a backup big to really rely on, not knowing when Bassey was coming back. But since Bassey's been back, he has looked so good, man. He's had so much energy. He's running the floor. He's getting blocks. He's getting dunks. He's doing all the things you want your big to do. He's doing all the little things, man. And it was great to see. So I had to shout out Bassey because I'm telling you right now, if Wemby's going to be out for an extended period of time, which I doubt, I don't think it's going to happen, I really think they should consider putting Bassey as the starter and letting Zach Collins remain his off the bench big role until Wemby comes back. Because I think there's going to be times. Now, listen, this might sound a little wild, but I do think there's going to be times when Bassey and Wemby are finishing games, not just playing on the court together. Because I mean, that's obvious. They're going to play on the court together because they like moving Wemby to the floor. But there's going to be times when Wemby and Bassey are going to be on the court together, finishing games. That is going to be a thing that happens because imagine that mismatch. Imagine that energy. Imagine that defense that you're able to put out there. And Pop loves putting out very interesting lineups, especially defensive lineups, right? And I think Mitch Johnson's going to be doing the same thing, right? Like, I truly believe this team is going to be really relying on Bassey if he continues to play like this. I mean, like, the kid is impressive and the team loves watching him do his thing. Like, there's an energy about what this team gets from Bassey, and I think they've been missing it. I think it's a piece that they really desperately needed. And to me, I don't think it's any doubt that, like, the Spurs have been winning since Bassey's been in the rotation and doing things. So it's been really impressive. I'm gonna give my guy Bassey love because I told y'all before the season started, this kid's a dog and this kid needs to be on the court. Y'all know I can't talk about this win without showing the veteran presence of Harrison Barnes some love, man. We've seen multiple games this season where Harrison Barnes has really taken on that scoring role, that dog role. And Harrison Barnes knew there wasn't a person on that court that was going to be able to guard him tonight, and he took off. And what I love about Harrison Barnes is that he's capable of doing this. We have been seeing games like this from him sporadically throughout the years but it's sporadic because he understands that he is a player that needs to play his role. His teams are at their best when he is playing a very specific type role. And tonight, the role needed to be a scorer. Tonight, the role needed to be a dog. Tonight, the role needed to be Lee Wolf. And I think him and Chris Paul really put that on their backs and really came out and led this team that, again, has been missing people, that is hurting, missing not just starters, not just really good players, but defenders, like real defenders, man. You talk about Wemby, you talk about Sochan. Those are some of the best defenders in the NBA right now, even at their age, if you really think about it. Then you add Vassell, who can shoot lights out and who can also play defense. And these guys aren't playing. These guys aren't there, but that's why you bring a guy like Harrison Barnes in, because you know you can count on him to do the dirty work. And tonight was dirty work, man. Let's keep it a buck. Like, starting off like that against this team is unacceptable. And it's not something that the Spurs are going to be super, super happy about when they watch the film, especially of that first quarter. But you bring a guy like Harrison Barnes in to do this dirty work. And that's what this was. That's what this second half was. That's what, honestly, the second through the fourth was. It was dirty work. It was scratching and clawing and trying to beat a team that you are outnumbered by at this point, right? Like, you are outnumbered when you are down all of these things that we have talked about in this video. But Harrison Barnes, he stepped up and showed that he can still carry a great workload. But he had 25 points, 10 rebounds, 4 or 5 from 3. What an efficient night. What an efficient night from an aging veteran guy, but he's not showing age. He's playing big minutes. He's out there playing defense. He's out there getting rebounds. He's out there hustling. And that was so impressive for me to see from Harrison Barnes. Like, I'm watching the game and all of a sudden I look at the score and I'm like, oh man, like, Harrison Barnes out there cooking, because he does it within the flow of the game. He's playing within the flow of the game, so it doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like he doesn't really take bad shots. Like, I'm not sitting watching Harrison Barnes and be like, oh man, I hated that shot. I'm not seeing that from him, and he is playing great basketball, and I think that he deserves his flowers for tonight. Like, the win tonight happens because of what Harrison Barnes was able to do. And man, it was just an impressive win, a great win, an impressive win for these Spurs. And again, when I say impressive, I'm not saying impressive because I think the Utah Jazz are a great team, or that I didn't think the Spurs should win, or even win by a bigger margin. What is impressive about this win is the fact that this team was able to come back and also have such a big fourth quarter. I'm sorry, bad teams don't have comebacks like this. Like, this comeback was a little different because not only did you come back, but you came back and showed, like, okay, we clearly were messed up. Like, I mean, that's what, like, we see that from elite playoff teams that start slow because they're just not really in it. Granted, that's not what the Spurs are right now. However, the ability to be able to come back, the ability to be able to have your coaching staff make the adjustments needed to be able to recover from a slow start without, like, more than half of your starters, that is what was impressive about this win. So Spurs Digest family, be happy. Spurs Digest family, be ecstatic, because the Spurs are moving in the right direction. I told y'all, 4 of their last 6 games have been wins, and we hope the Spurs keep it rolling. Man, I'm so happy to be able to make a video after a win. It feels good. It always feels good to talk to y'all. Holla at us in the comments. Share y'all excitement with us. And until next time, Spurs family, I'm Bryan Colbert Jr. here with a Spurs Digest post-game show. Y'all celebrate this win tonight, but do it responsibly.